Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel. This video is part 2 from my nail prep. Make sure you go and watch that video first. And this is just going to be going through the application now. So after you have dehydrated and primed the nail, we're going to do the first layer of gel, the base layer, and you really want to make sure that you've got it spread out evenly, pretty thin coating, just like you would do a base on, gel polish or nail polish. We need to get the base down and make sure you're really getting it into the nail. Sometimes kind of jiggling as you pull down really helps get it into the nail. And then it goes into the UV light for 30 seconds, and I'm just filing off just a little bit of roughness that I felt because it needs to be completely smooth and blended. And so I'm just going in with the other hand on the pinky. I got too much product. It's real easy to do that. I just kind of placed it on the other nail. Now I moved on to this nail and gel's already there, so that's fine. And you'll find that you really don't need much sometimes, and you just got to be careful. Make sure it's spread out. Don't get it on the skin. You will have lifting, even if it's the tiniest bit. So you really need to be careful. Even at this stage, even though it's such a thin layer, you still want to avoid the skin, the folds around the nail. But you do need to make sure it is close as possible without touching. And so that one goes into the lamp as well. And now we are back on the other hand, and we're just putting down a thicker base, because I'm going to be doing we're going to mix a color eventually, and because we just wanted quite a deep red, and I didn't quite have the color, but I did have a whole bunch of other colors. I had a whole heap of different kind of reds, so we ended up mixing them together, made this nice beautiful red. Did have a little trouble, ended up using a little bit too much black but we got there after quite a lot of adding. I think there was 4 different kinds of reds, black, and then another color. So, but you'll see when we get to that. And so you just want to be careful with these. So I was doing 2 nails at a time, but I was making sure that I was being very careful, making sure that the other nail that I just done was sitting there nicely. If your gel is too runny, it's not going to work out like that, and you just need to do the 1 nail at a time. But this gel was holding up pretty well, and I was really making sure that it wasn't falling. So then after that, I get it to put a hand upside down and then put it into the UV light for 2 minutes. And that's really important that you put it upside down to let gravity pull it down. Although it didn't 100% matter too much with this layer about having an apex, because this is just the base for the color, and then we're going to encapsulate the color. And so the final lot of gel is when you want to make sure that you have your apex. And it can be difficult with gel, but you just gotta keep at it. And obviously I'm still going to be explaining how I did it, so yeah. So obviously after doing the 2 nails, they go into the light as well. So to explain exactly what I'm doing is I'm grabbing a bead and I'm carefully placing it down on the nail. and I'm feathering it around and bouncing it around. Sometimes it looks like my brush is coming right away from the nail, but unless I'm pulling it right back and removing it, I always remove the brush after pulling it downwards to create less air bubbles. But I'm actually, when I'm feather it around like that, it's not, the gel is still attached. And then, so I feather it around, and then as I was doing just then, I pull the product down in the middle, because that's where you need the bulk of the product. But obviously, in saying that, you need to make sure that you get the sides. So the bottom layer, the first layer we put down, if it was pushed out to the sides enough, this layer should easily grab onto that, but it is a bit of maneuvering around. And this is where we are mixing the color. So straight away, put too much black in. And I should have realized, but I just wasn't realizing, obviously. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's a little amount, but no. That was way too much. You really don't need a lot sometimes. So here I was adding the different reds, mixing, seeing how everything turns out. And it was just too brown. It wasn't exactly what we were looking for, but it's almost there. So we just kept playing around with it. I'm like, I might take some out just because it was so much. That way we can fit more in, because it was a little container. And we just kept trying, mixing and adding. Obviously, if you have a color that already to use, you won't need to mix any, but obviously you still can, but you do have to be careful. I was a bit worried because we used like 3 different brands, but it ended up, when we got there, it ended up being really good. So when I was mixing this on the lid as well, it was really nice. And I'm like, okay, so that was just a little bit of that product, and mostly red. So I ended up just plopping that into one of my reds. I'm like, this should do it. Too bad if it wasn't gonna work, you know, just sacrifice the red. I'm like, okay, hopefully this will work, right? And I'm like, oh, that looks quite brown. Still looks a little brown. So I ended up adding some translucent purple. We were wondering what we could add, because sometimes it just wasn't going right with adding different reds. And I'm like, you know what, I think I have a nice purple that would really bring it, you know, back. And it worked. But I just realized my phone stopped recording, so I didn't get me mixing for the end result, because I was using my mobile, and sometimes it just stopped recording because I didn't have enough space. But here's the color here, and I know it looked a little messy how I was applying it, and I just was trying to be careful. And I'm just doing really thin layers of this, especially because I mix different brands and so many colors. I didn't want it to be too thick, just in case something went wrong. And it's best to be on the thin side, even when it comes to gel colors. So it wasn't a gel polish, they're gel colors. They're generally thicker, because it's okay to be a little more on the thick side, but I still wanted to keep it thin, and it worked out pretty well. And the color ended up being really nice. So I'm kind of glad that I have like a tub of it. So still keeping it very thin, I'm just slowly working it down the nail. So I get a little bit, and then I push it back up to the cuticle a little bit, and then I pull the product down, and then I come around to the sides, pulling, kind of doing it in a shifting motion, just so that it's really attaching to the other gel. Just wriggle it as I pull it down, and making sure that it's very even and that it's not too thick or too thin. And I'm just correcting the cuticle, making sure it's nice and neat around the cuticle, pushing the product back as far as I can get it without touching the skin, because no matter at any point if you touch the skin, it can be pretty bad because you'll have lifting. And so, like I said, placing the product on, pushing it back to the cuticle, and then just stroking down. And as you can see, I got some on the skin, and I just got my nail and wiped around to get it off. Some people might have a problem with this if you're actually doing that on a client. They feel like it's unsanitary, but you are supposed to sanitize and have clean hands and nails before you do them. And I don't think it's a really big deal, personally, in my opinion. But obviously, I guess if you're working on people you don't know very well and maybe aren't aware of the process, you'll need to use just a wooden stick to scrape any off the skin. If you're not sure, because especially when you're doing the clear gel, if some might be on the skin, to just be sure, you can just go around the skin folds to be sure that it separates. So that way, even if there's still a little bit on the skin, you're at least separating it, and that the bit that's on the skin will just come off without lifting the whole nail. And I'm out of frame because I'm good at that. It's something I'm good at, okay? And so once you've done the first layer, obviously you put that in the UV lamp for 2 minutes. And then this is the second coat. I probably was a little thicker with the second coat, and it's a little easier to do the second coat because it should just attach right where you've got that original red, the original first layer. And so I'm doing the same thing, placing the product in the middle of the finger, push it up slightly to the cuticle, drag it down, and then dragging it on the sides and then on the other side, and just making sure that it is even and everything like that. And with the second layer, it's fine to be a little thicker. We like it thick, yeah. Sorry, I should never do that again. Also, don't forget to cure in between each layer for 2 minutes in UV lamp. So then, after both of your layers are cured, we're moving on to encapsulating the color. And so it's basically the same with picking up a bead, and obviously this is going to be the thickest layer, and we're placing it in the middle, and we're pushing it up to the cuticles, and we're feathering it down wherever it needs to be. I was also kept not picking up enough product, so I'm going back, making sure I'm putting the hand upside down right now, and then maneuvering it with the brush, because I want to make sure that the apex is there, and if it isn't, I'm adding I can't speak right now. I'm adding more gel, especially in the middle or wherever it needs to be. Sometimes I'll string it on, or sometimes I'll tickle it, feather it. But I'm definitely making sure that this layer is being, the client is putting the hand upside down, and then I'm even to making sure I'm using my brush while her hand is upside down to make sure that it's all done. And then so once you have encapsulated all of the nails, I wanted to record more, by the way, but my phone kept stopping. I kept having to delete things. That's why hopefully you understand what I'm saying. I'm sure that most people watching this already know what I'm on about. But if you don't, that's why this video exists, so it's fine. So we're on to filing. After the encapsulated layer has been done, wipe off the tacky layer with alcohol or whatever you have to use, and then just going to file on one side, file around the cuticle, then file around the other side, and then slowly working my way into the middle and kind of keeping the file really straight so it's not filing away the apex, because it's important that you have that structure. Also, don't file too aggressively because gel is very soft. It's a lot softer than acrylic if you're used to using acrylic, and gel is a lot softer. But like I said, my phone stopped recording. I didn't even get me putting top coat on. So after I buffed and filed the nails, we put top coat on, and don't forget the cuticle oil. And then these were the end results, and I think they're very beautiful. It's just simple color, plain color, but it's nice. Hopefully you guys learned something. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks, I'll see you next time, bye.